series special for the month of October, where instead of sharing with you cases that happened around Halloween, this year I decided to share with you the series Real Life Monsters. Around this time of the year, we tend to watch those movies that will keep us in the edge of our seats. I have this tradition of watching Halloween themed movies for the entire month, and also on Halloween do a specific series of movies like I think I've done for the last 4 years. I've been doing the Halloween franchise movies, and last year sucked, the new one, but it's a tradition I love to watch with my kids. My high schooler, the only one I have left in high school, is bringing his girlfriend this Halloween, and we're definitely going to continue our tradition. We're loyal to it, but I think despite the movie itself being scary, or the situations shared there, in the end we know we're safe, right? We're at home, we're under a warm blanket. It is fall. It is a beautiful time of the year. And we know that for that franchise, like Michael Myers, he's just a messed up dude in a movie. But in this series I'm sharing with you, it gets a little bit scarier because these people are real monsters. They live at some point among us, among our parents, our grandparents' generation. And as you know, they don't wear a sign that say, I'm a serial killer, I'm a monster, I'm a kidnapper. So to me, that makes them the more scarier. So before I share with you today's case, I'd like to ask for your help in taking a few seconds to leave a comment before you fall asleep. Comment on the case if you're watching till the end. Say hello. Share where you're watching from, or leave an emoji. It is free. It only takes a few seconds, and you're helping a lot. If you want to watch this series for the entire month, I will do those of you here on YouTube, you'll get one every other day. Between whispered and soft spoken. It's a circus around here. Hopefully everyone will settle. Now, we're gonna go back to the year 1985. And actually, it was the day after Labor Day. As you know, at least here in Oregon, the day after Labor Day, it's the first day of school. And even if where you live, kids go back to school in August, you almost feel like school doesn't start until it gets to the day after a long weekend like Labor Day. Now, Leonard Tyburski, who was 42 years old, was very excited about the new school year. He was starting a new year with new students, and he was starting to get to know them. So, Leonard was promoted the year before to Dean of Students and Chief Disciplinary Officer at the high school that he worked, which was Mackenzie High School, located in the eastern suburbs of Detroit. Leonard was not new to the school. On the school scene, I should say. He had worked for the Detroit School District for over 20 years. And in only a few more years, he could retire. But Leonard met Dorothy Parker back when he was 21, when he was working as a biology teacher. This was kind of a creepy situation since she was 16 years old. And she, being a sophomore, completely illegal and inappropriately relationship to have. But she had a crush on her handsome and, may I add, very young teacher. So she started flirting with him. And eventually he gave in to his feelings. And he started a romantic relationship with Dorothy. As you know, 5 years is not a big gap for a relationship. My husband is 4 years older than me. So that's not where the problem comes from, but the violation of school policy, and it was just wrong, and it still is today. So they were hiding their relationship relationship, but they didn't want to. So Dorothy decided to drop out of high school so they could keep their relationship going. And Leonard offered love and financial support. So, remember, we went back in time. So, it's 3 years later. Dorothy was of legal age. This was in 1967. So they decided to get married. Dorothy's family didn't like it. They just didn't see as a good fit. They knew that Leonard was controlling, so much so that he didn't want his wife to work. He was also obsessed with cleanliness and order, and in his head, a woman's job was to keep the house not clean but spotless, and Dorothy did exactly as he asked. Leonard eventually tried to Dorothy to himself and away from her family and friends. He would pick up the phone and say, "Oh, she's busy doing her chores. Oh, she's not here." But the family was very not only suspicious, but assuming this abuse in a relationship. Eventually, they started noticing Dorothy's bruises. There was this one time when she showed up to visit with a black eye. She always had an excuse for why she had those. But eventually, Dorothy and Leonard had a daughter. Her name was Kelly. Kelly was born 3 years after they got married. Then 3 years later, they had their second daughter, Kim. But their relationship was terrible. They were always arguing. Objects thrown across the room, pushing, screaming, name-calling. The little girl, Kim, tried to avoid the confrontation, so she would hide in her room and rarely would come out. She made herself her own safe space. She had a TV, a phone, a radio, and she even kept the food in there. However, Kelly, the older daughter, was always kind of in the middle, and was always taking her mom's side. Dorothy, always been social. At this point, she continued to be. But eventually, after so much drama with her husband, she changed a lot. Or had to, because was very jealous. And he would tell his own daughters that their mom was probably having an affair with other people, or affairs with other men. When Dorothy was in her late 20s, he actually accused her of having an affair with this older man who was a pet shop owner. And he would tell the girls, a man that she bred rabbits with, while another was the local pharmacist. He had like this different people that he believed she was cheating on him with this random guys. The girls never saw any kind of proof. Leonard and Dorothy had a beautiful home. It was like a ranch style home in a neighborhood in this suburb of Detroit. Dorothy had no time to cheat on her husband, really. She kept the home and the yard looking like a magazine. But Leonard's career was doing well. They'd been married for 17 years. But all this drama was taking a toll in their relationship. In the year 1984, going back into the future where we started, Dorothy's sister, Lorraine, died in a crash. Lorraine was Dorothy's best friend, and they shared everything. So Dorothy was devastated, but Leonard was happy because he didn't like Dorothy's sister. He knew that Dorothy would talk to her sister behind his back. So he was quite happy and had no sympathy for his wife. Now his wife was all to himself. But Dorothy, trying her best, she still fell into a deep depression. She would write letters to her dead sister. By then, Kelly turned 17 and Kim 14. They were very outgoing and normal teenagers who started lives of their own. So Dorothy, now 37, was feeling so lonely. She was very bored with her life. There was only so much she could clean, and she felt like she missed out on so much by dropping out of high school and marrying this guy so young. Now it was the year 1985, and Dorothy and Leonard argued most of the time, and it kind of made it worse when Kelly started dating a new boy, Greg Albright. Greg and Kelly worked together at a fast food restaurant. He was attractive she would talk to him for hours. She would invite herself to go on their dates. They would go to movies and restaurants, and all of a sudden it was a relationship of 3. So Kelly and her mom's relationship deteriorated. Dorothy kind of started fighting for this boy's attention. It was just a very awkward dilemma they had with each other. So Leonard starts noticing the change in Dorothy as well, okay? And they were constantly arguing. And eventually Dorothy kind of admits that she likes Greg. She was actually saying this to his face, to Leonard's face. She taunted him every day with it, and eventually Greg's parents kicked him out of the house. And Dorothy suggested that he moved in. Why didn't you come on over here? We're a bunch of weirdos. So he stayed on the couch until, the idea was to find another place to live. Leonard didn't like it, but he agreed. But Greg then, he started feeling the tension in the house. Leonard would yell at the girls and Dorothy in front of him. And over the following weeks, Dorothy pursued his attention. Not Leonard's, but Greg's, the 18-year-old boy. She would run around the house in her underwear. And say, touch me, come on, are you a chicken? She didn't even care that Leonard was around. She actually wanted him to see. Eventually, Leonard, went to Kelly and accused her mother of sleeping with Greg. I mean, talk about awkward. But, she was trying to be sneaky and only behaving this way when Kelly wasn't around. So, despite Dorothy not being obvious in front of Kelly, Kelly did notice that Dorothy was kind of being a little clingy to her boyfriend. But she didn't think anything of it. Greg would never do that to her. And most importantly, her mother wouldn't do that to her. But child's mother, yeah, you think. But I can't believe that the 18-year-old grew a conscience and the mother didn't. So when Dorothy suggested a third time, he said no. So Dorothy felt rejected, and when Kelly came home from work on September 22nd, 1985, she found her mom at the kitchen table writing something on a piece of paper. Leonard was sitting in the family room silently. There was tension, you could feel it in the air, but nobody was speaking. So when Kelly goes to her mom and asks what's going on, she said, quote, "I have something I want you to sign when I'm done. I took a bunch of pills and I'm going to die." Kelly started crying hysterically and begged her father to call an ambulance. But he rolled his eyes and didn't do anything. When Dorothy finished writing, she showed the paper to Kelly. It was her last will and testament, where she was asking the insurance money that she had inherited from her sister's death to be put in a trust, and she wanted the trust to be controlled by her friend Linda and not Leonard. She also wrote in that letter that it was Leonard's fault that she committed suicide. Kelly just threw a fit at her mother and father's behavior. She felt like she was to blame for her mother's sadness, and she ran across the street to the neighbor's house and explained what was happening to Linda, who initially thought it was a joke, but when she realized that it wasn't, she called 911. When Kelly returned to the house, Dorothy was not there, and Leonard was sitting in the same spot, undisturbed. Eventually, the police found her half a mile away, passed out in a bank parking lot. The ambulance took her to the hospital, and she had her stomach pumped. And when she regained consciousness, Kelly and Craig were there. Dorothy told Kelly she loved her and kissed her. But when Craig bent down to hug her, she kissed him on the lips. He felt so uncomfortable. And that's when when Kelly realized that her mother was in love with her boyfriend. Then fast forward to 4 days later. Craig was in the driveway of Leonard in Dorothy's home. He was washing his car, and Leonard came out of the house to talk to him. Leonard asked him to leave for 30 minutes because he needed to have his car and left. Leonard went back into the house and confronted Dorothy. He was sure she was having an affair and accused her of having sex with Greg. Oh, we know it was true. Dorothy admitted her affair and screamed back at Leonard. He just couldn't believe it. He was so mad. And Dorothy continued to taunt him. She was emasculating him. Comments that made him feel like as big as an ant. She continued screaming as she headed down the stairs into the basement. She was going to get meat out of the freezer. At the bottom of the stairs, they continued to scream at each other. And Dorothy finally said it. She wasn't happy and she wanted out. Leonard slapped her and she tried to hit him back. And she actually was carrying a knife and tried to hit him with that hand. So Leonard exploded in anger, grabbed her head, and slammed it into this pillar that supported the home. The first blow knocked her unconscious, but he continued to beat her head against it over and over. Eventually, she fell on the floor, covered in blood. Leonard walked back up the stairs to his bedroom, washed up, and changed his clothes. He was hoping that he'd go down the stairs and that she'd be okay. Maybe this never happened and he was just imagining it. But it did happen. So he went back into the basement, opened the chest freezer and dropped her body inside and twisted the lock. Greg came back an hour later and Leonard met him outside. He said to get out of there and that he wasn't welcome anymore. Greg thought, okay, finally he knows and he hates my guts. Greg punched the side mirror of his own car, then climbed back into it and drove off. Greg then drove to Kelly's workplace. He was so upset he could barely speak. He told her that he was kicked out of the house and that he couldn't even get his clothes. That he was afraid that something wrong was, something was happening between her mom and dad. And that he believed that she was gone. And then the phone rang at Kelly's workplace. And it was Leonard. Leonard tells his daughter, Kelly, sister Kim and went straight to their grandmother's house. Now, Leonard knew what he was doing, so he was trying to cover it up. Minutes after he killed his wife, he walked across the street to Linda's house and told her that Dorothy was having an affair with Craig and that she left him. In the following days, he told Dorothy's family that she had run off with another man and that she was living in Monroe, Michigan, or Ohio. He wasn't even sure. Dorothy's family had their doubts. As did Kelly and Kim. Leonard eventually filed a missing person report 4 days after the incident. But when Kelly read the newspaper account of the police report, she got even more confused about what he told the police. The article also said that Dorothy had a history of leaving home, and that wasn't true. Leonard told Kelly that he had watched her mom go out the door several times. The article also said that she took a large amount of money with her. But Kelly knew that her mom never had more than $30 or $40 at a time. That was the top that Leonard would allow her to have. And police were not dumb. They were suspicious of his explanation. But he passed a lie detector test. And they wrote it off as, a woman leaving her husband. Kelly and Craig stopped seeing each other after that. Kelly fell into a super deep depression. She blamed herself for her mother's disappearance. Leonard also said to her several times that Dorothy, didn't want to talk to her daughters, and that she didn't like Kelly specifically. Add something to the story, Leonard eventually tells Dorothy's family that Dorothy had called him, asking him to bring her some clothes, and that he dropped them off at the rest area just south of Detroit. Kelly had her suspicions. Kelly knew Kim left for school every day after her father left for work, and that she'd be back from school before him as well. But if you remember, Kim rarely left the house, and she would have heard the phone ring or know that her mother had called. Months later, Kelly enrolled in school. Michigan State University. She was still deeply disturbed about her mother and why she wouldn't call her. Even if she had another man, why didn't she called her daughters, her brother, even sister, missing Kelly's high school graduation. Not Kelly's, but Kim's. But Leonard was working diligently to separate the daughters from each other, turn them against each other. Kim, still living at home, was very quiet. She would spend most of her time in her room. So he would just buy her gifts, like a $1,500 drum set. This drum set was just a few feet away from her mother's frozen body. Leonard often complained about how school was very expensive. And how much it bothered him that he had to pay for the long distance calls from where Kelly was at. But by the fall of 1988, Kelly's depression was at its worst. She couldn't eat or sleep and lost 20 pounds. And every time she would fall asleep, she would dream of her mother and would see her hunch over in a chair. As it happens in dreams, you try to do something and you can't. In this case, Kelly would try to run to her mother, but was paralyzed. And in her dreams, she could sense that her mom was very sad and mad. So over Thanksgiving holiday, Kelly went home to spend the holiday with Kim and her father. Kelly cooked for the family and then eventually went down to the basement. She wanted to make stuffed cabbage. That's what her mom used to make for every Thanksgiving. And she was hoping that her mom had left some in the freezer. But when she reached for the key to the freezer, it was missing. When she asked her dad about it, he said that his mother, like her mother, not his, but her mother, took it when she left. Which, why would you do that? She left with her clothes, but she took the key. So she went back to school and came back the following month for Christmas break. Kelly still kept in touch with Craig. So when he heard that she was in town for winter break, he invited her to a New Year's Eve party. At that party, Kelly told Craig about her dreams, about her mom, and the weird incident with the freezer key. So she was starting to think that there was something inside the freezer that was probably something her dad was hiding. It all seemed very weird, and Greg agreed and suggested, why don't you just just use a screwdriver. And she even said something like, "You think my dad put her in there, right?" So after the break on January 2nd, 1989, Kelly was packing her bag to return to school. But she continued to think about that conversation with Greg. So she went down the basement stairs and actually stared at the lock on the freezer. Then she looked for her dad's nearby toolbox, took a screwdriver and a paint lid remover. Kim was upstairs and she started to hear this loud pounding. Leonard was not home, so she knew it wasn't her dad. Then she heard thuds. And all of a sudden, Kelly burst into Kim's room and screamed, quote, "Oh my God, Mom's in the freezer. Mom is in the freezer." As you can imagine, both of their hearts were pounding, and Leonard was going to get home any minute. They were afraid they would end up like their mother. A few minutes later, Leonard walked in the back door. The girls remained calm as much as they could and talked to their dad for a while. Greg was planning to drive Kelly back to school that afternoon. And he actually came back an hour after the girls found the body. So, Greg, when he walked into the house, Kelly whispered, "Act like nothing happened." And he looked at her and said, "Why?" "Because I just found Mom." Kelly and Kim got into the car, and Greg drove to the police station. They were really scared of their dad. Leonard was arrested and charged with murder. He later confessed to killing his wife. He claimed they were arguing, that she was going down the stairs. He followed, and that she tried to hurt him with a kitchen knife. And that she was really, she was screaming and making emasculating remarks. Oh no, that's the end of the world. I mean, the excuses for murder just piss me off. According to Leonard, she kept yelling and saying that Greg satisfied her and I didn't. And she kept looking at me and calling me a wimp, a punk, and a bastard. End quote. So he flew into this rage and slammed her head into the support beam. And that she actually stumbled backwards and fell into the freezer. Bullcrap. She even told detectives that she fell in, like heaven that she was still breathing unconscious. Well, is that making it any better? I don't know. You tell me, weirdo. Like my dogs, they're weirdos too. He then went upstairs and washed off the blood, went back downstairs, and by then she was really dead. So he's trying to tell me that she was half in, half out of the freezer. Sir, no. So, as you can imagine, me not being a detective can't even think about a possibility like that. So detectives easily disproved his story, and I mean, it was clear that her head was smashed more than 10 times, and that would have killed her. She had a broken index finger, defensive wounds on her arms, bruises on her face, chest, shoulders. And because there's no really evidence of premeditation, it was ruled as a manslaughter or a second-degree murder. And he was tried and convicted for it, and sentenced to 20 to 40 years in prison. However, in November of 1994, his conviction was overturned on a technicality, which I hate. So instead of going through another trial, he pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. So he served 10 years already, and he was released from prison after the 10 years. After that, he went back home to Muncie, Pennsylvania, where he was from, to live with his parents. He lived off his Detroit school district pension until his death in the year 2014. Kim stuck by her father's side during his trial, and even afterwards. Kelly was not supportive at all of her dad. But after he was released, she warmed up to him somewhat. But described her relationship with her dad as fine. I really don't like this kind of story where it involves a lot of abuse, and that it's normalized in a family, so much so that they cannot see it. They're so used to the abuse, the name calling, the yelling, disrespect, that they don't understand that's not normal. The fact that this guy kept his wife in the freezer for so long, it really is, I think, in my humble opinion, a testament of the kind of person that he was. He wanted things to be done a specific way, and if they weren't, then he'd have to take care of it, even by, being abusive physically, or being abusive not sitting here and excusing Dorothy's behavior, because as his behavior was inappropriate as a teacher with a student, and I don't get why he continued to work for the same school district despite her dropping out of high school. I think that's a kind of thing that, it's not, that's kind of crossing a line. At that point, it's not your personal life, but it's what you're doing at work that connects to your personal life. So, inappropriately started a relationship with a minor, and then Dorothy inappropriately started a relationship with her daughter's boyfriend, who was only 18. I don't know what she thought of that. I don't know if she was extremely troubled, and I don't know. I really don't know what the deal is with this family, but all I can say is that abuse is a routine. Abuse is something you can get used to. Abuse is something that can turn into your new normal, but it's not. And in this case, the abusive behavior of the dad really destroyed this girl's mom's life, destroyed their lives. And overall, if there is something that I'm hoping right now, is that Kelly and Kim found themselves in a good relationship, in a healthy family dynamic, and that they are able to break the abuse, mental and physical abuse cycle that they've been throughout their lives. Having children while you're young, it's not an excuse for not trying your best. Oh, I was young, or I am young, I make mistakes. Well, that's not an excuse. You're young, you're prone to make mistakes, then do better. You can't do it alone, get help. Your husband is getting in the way, leave him. If you or anybody you know is living in an abusive relationship, I'm gonna say something that it might sound very dumb, but I hope that it's the encouragement that somebody else needs out there to get out of it. Number one, it never ends well for you. It never ends well for the victims of that abuse. And number two, make the decision and do it. Leave that abusive person. Find the farthest away from that person's spot in the entire country and get away from him or her. I can assure you, you can always start over. I always say, first you need to make the decision, and then the doors will open. But you first have to make the decision. So decide today to break the cycle if you're living in that cycle. Look for help. Are you depressed? Are you anxious? Are you struggling? Go to your doctor. Go to a doctor. Explain yourself. Look for help. And hopefully you won't turn into one of these horrible cases or stories or victims that could just walk away from it. Thank you for being here today, guys. I truly appreciate you coming back. And this is our monster number 3. He lives in a house. He has a family. He has a regular job. Yet he's a monster.